Okay, everybody, so today we are going to get into discussing part one of 19th century European society. So let's just jump right into it. So basically, we're going to be talking about economic classes here, okay? And the first is we're going to say the upper class and then the middle class and lower class. I really hate saying all of these things. It's just kind of the description, but basically, we're looking at different levels of wealth and stuff like that. Now, as far as the upper class or wealthy are concerned, they're still only making up about 5% of the overall population. However, they control upwards of at least 40% of the wealth. And what we have here is kind of a new elite known as plutocrats, as you see on the right there, of the wealthy man in the top hats and the carriage as a guy tries to get some money from them. Basically, a plutocrat, for a textbook definition here, is a person who derives their power from wealth, not birth or station. So we have industrialists, bankers, merchants, etc. I'll give you some examples of families from that time, and then from some more modern day families as well. These folks also sometimes can get into politics or influence politics through their money and job creations and stuff like that. Okay. Now, old nobles are finally also responding even more by investing in railroads and public utilities and government bonds. But overall, landowner wealth will decrease with time, and they are going to make up less and less of that millionaire group. Okay. So, what does it look like where they live in the cities and whatnot? Well, you really get two types of housing. This is one of the sections of London that is the most expensive section. These are very fancy townhouses. They are quite large. These to modern day cost millions of dollars. They're often in separate sections of the city, and they have things like their own little private gardens, which I think all you can do is sit and contemplate, because here you have no ball games, cycle riding, dogs, stuff like that. This is in London, by the way. Or you have people living in your classic country estates. That is very, very important. These are either vacation houses, or sometimes the family might live here, and then periodically they might go into the town for other business and stuff like that. So, we're still living large. Now, education is going to be a growing thing. This is going to be very, very important for the upper class, is that you need to get your children educated in elite schools. What you have here is a picture of Oxford, which is really one of the schools that is most emblematic of that. And what you're going to see now is places like Oxford are going to be made up more of the children of industrialists and bankers, as opposed to nobles and stuff like that. And what ends up happening is then they then use education to dominate government positions, the military, and things, in that type of vein. And then the other thing with the upper class is through marriage, you are looking to gain more money and looking to gain more more prestige. Okay, so it's not about the titles anymore, it's about just sheer wealth. And then families really expanding upon that as well. Probably the most famous family at this time would be the Rothschilds, which was created by Mayer Rothschild, who created a giant banking and finance company. And then what he ended up doing is, they are actually originally out of Germany, but will then set up his 5 sons in places like Amsterdam and London. Today, they are worth billions of dollars. Lots of conspiracy theories about them that you could buy into if you want. Sadly, many of those conspiracy theories are very much anti-Semitic, but nonetheless, they are one of the bigger families. The two probably biggest families today would be the Bettencourts and the Arnaults. Lillian Bettencourt started basically a beauty empire, and it's L'Oreal and other types of other types of uh, beauty type companies as well that they've done very good. And then you have Bernard Arnault, who his company now owns things like Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and Christian Dior. And so these families are really, really powerful in a variety of different ways today. Now, you then have the development of the middle class, who's getting bigger and bigger. And so, who's in the middle class? You've got lawyers and doctors and civil servants and, kind of moderate industrialists, maybe someone that might own like a factory. And then some like business managers, engineers, architects, accountants, and chemists. And it's growing because then you also then have like a lower middle class of people, if you will. I mean by lower, they don't make quite as much money, but they're still not part of the urban poor group. People that own like their own shops and small manufacturers, well-to-do peasants. There are farmers that can make some money. Traveling salesmen, bookkeepers, telephone operators, bank tellers, department store clerks, and salespeople. Secretaries, which early on are more of a man's job. They're kind of more like the personal assistants to these industrialists. And the key thing with this group is that they don't have property, but they have enough money to save a bit and do things. And here's an example of a family here. They went and got a nice portrait taken. They make enough money to buy some suits and nicer clothing for their children, but not like some crazy amount of stuff. And why the middle class was so important is a lot of them, they do things like they embrace science and change. They're more willing to do that. They're very big on social change and hard work. They tended to be big church goers, and so you see churches will start to expand. And overall, as I'll get into my second presentation on the classes at this time, what you're going to be seeing is really an expanded ability of the middle class to buy things and to do things, and it's not just all about work just for survival anymore. Rural, however, the quote-unquote lower classes are still having to work very, very hard. In the rural lower class, you have landowning peasants, sharecroppers, and then farm workers. Their values are very similar to the working class. It's just sometimes it's harder for them to make money. Now, some folks could make just as much money as an urban middle class. However, it was harder, okay? And the numbers weren't necessarily as high because in rural areas with the adoption of like technology and stuff like that, the needs for these workers are going to be reduced. The urban lower class is going to be much, much harder. We're still going to have our same issues. You see people in the basically broken out building. These are unskilled laborers, day laborers, people that try to just go and find work every day, but it's not steady work, as well as domestic servants. Now, their living conditions did improve, which we talked about on previous videos, but it's going to be harder. Now, what we will see, though, and I've discussed this, wages have started to go up a little bit, and so these people are starting to get more and more of a chance to increase their ability to save and stuff like that, but it's still going to be really, really hard, just as it is for any poorer person today. All right, so that kind of just shakes out the classes, if you will, of what people were doing then, and we'll continue on with part 2 of this video coming up. All right, see you guys soon.